All right, so you've been looking into how to make Earth and space science more engaging for your students,
Absolutely.
and you've been checking out BBC Earth as a resource.
Yeah, it looks like a really promising one.
It does. And I know from experience that trying to evaluate a website for educational use can feel like a research project in itself.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot to consider.
There is. So luckily, you've also been using Schrock's Tech Evaluation Guide and the SAMR model to help you break things down.
Yeah, they're great tools for getting a clearer picture.
They are. And that's where our expert comes in today to help us unpack those insights.
I'm excited to dive in.
Me too. I was really struck by the idea that BBC Earth could encourage students to ask more why questions.
Oh, yeah, that's a good sign.
It is. To me, that signals a real shift from just passively absorbing information to that genuine curiosity.
That's exactly what we want, right?
Yeah.
To foster that inquiry-based learning where students are actively engaged and thinking critically.
Exactly. So to assess that potential, you've looked at Schrock's Tech Evaluation Guide, which I know is typically used to evaluate apps.
Yeah, it is.
So was it still useful in this case when we're looking at a website like BBC Earth?
I think so. I mean, it provided some really valuable insights.
Okay.
And interestingly, BBC Earth passed most of the criteria.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, highlighting its potential for classroom use. But there was one point that really made me think.
Okay, what was that?
The evaluation marked feedback and reporting as NA.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
What do you think that means in this context?
Well, I think it highlights a key difference between a website like BBC Earth and a dedicated educational app.
Okay.
BBC Earth is amazing at presenting information and sparking exploration,
Right.
but it doesn't have built-in features to track student progress or offer personalized feedback in the same way a structured learning platform might.
Oh, I see. So it's more about providing the raw materials for learning.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
the teacher would need to structure those materials and kind of build the learning experience around them.
Exactly. That's where frameworks like the SAMR model can be so helpful.
Okay.
They help us see how technology can be used not just to replace old methods, but to truly transform learning.
That's a good point.
And you found that BBC Earth fits into both the enhancement and transformation categories.
Yes. I'm very curious to hear more about that.
Yeah, so when we talk about enhancement, we're looking at ways technology can make learning more engaging and effective without completely changing the teaching approach.
Okay.
And I think BBC Earth's visuals and the variety of content definitely fit that description.
Oh, absolutely.
You can imagine taking a lesson on ecosystems, for example. And instead of just textbooks, students could be exploring a virtual rainforest through BBC Earth's footage.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. You're really tapping into multiple senses, making the learning experience much richer.
Exactly.
But what about transformation? How does BBC Earth go beyond just enhancing existing methods?
Well, transformation is really about pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the classroom and redefining learning experiences. So, for example, if students are learning about climate change, they could use BBC Earth to connect with students in another country,
Wow.
sharing observations, working on solutions together. That kind of global collaboration was much harder before we had these easily accessible platforms.
Yeah, that's a great example of how technology can remove those geographical barriers and open up new possibilities for learning and modification. The other part of transformation is about redesigning existing tasks, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Instead of just giving a lecture on the food chain, imagine students using BBC Earth to analyze the relationships within a specific ecosystem.
Okay.
They could identify keystone species, look at the impact of environmental changes, maybe even create presentations or digital models based on what they find.
That's really empowering them to become active investigators instead of just passively taking in information.
Exactly.
And I remember you mentioned this idea of BBC Earth being a starter kit for problem solving.
Oh, right. Yeah.
What did you mean by that?
Well, BBC Earth doesn't shy away from showing real-world problems like climate change, deforestation, endangered species.
Right.
By presenting these issues in a way that's engaging, it can encourage students to think critically about solutions.
I see.
It's not just about learning the facts. It's about using that knowledge to tackle real challenges.
It's almost like turning Earth and space science into a hands-on lab for addressing those real-world issues.
Exactly. And the great thing is the skills they develop through this kind of exploration, those critical thinking skills, collaboration, problem solving,
Yeah,
those are valuable no matter what field they go into later on.
that's a really important point. It's not just about the content. It's about giving them the tools to be successful in any field.
Exactly. And it makes you
Yeah,
wonder,
that.
Could these kinds of platforms like BDC Earth, by making science so engaging, could they actually influence the careers students choose down the road?
Yeah, it's really fascinating to think about the impact this could have, not just on how students learn about the world, but on the paths they choose to take.
Yeah, definitely. It shows just how powerful it can be to make learning engaging and relevant. When students connect with the subject in a real way, they're more likely to pursue it with passion. And who knows what incredible discoveries or innovations could come from that.
Absolutely. And speaking of pursuing passions, I know some of our listeners are interested in careers in higher education, particularly in research and teaching.
That's a really rewarding path for people who love to explore and share knowledge.
It is, and for anyone who's considering that journey, I always recommend checking out academicjobs.com.
Oh, yeah, that's a great resource.
It is. It's a
Yeah.
fantastic resource for finding professor and research positions in all sorts of different fields.
Really helpful for anyone who's drawn to that kind of work.
Yeah. So as we wrap up our deep dive into BBC Earth, I think the key takeaway here is that it's not just about the amazing content itself.
Right.
It's about the potential to spark curiosity, to inspire problem solving, and maybe even to influence those future career paths.
It really is. It's a reminder that learning should be an adventure,
Right.
full of exploration and discovery. And with tools like BDC Earth, that adventure becomes even more accessible and engaging.
I love that. Well said. So to all our listeners out there, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep asking those why questions, and keep
Hmm.
diving deep into the things that fascinate you. You never know what you might find.
Absolutely. Happy exploring, everyone.